Welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. Merry Christmas, everybody. Hopefully you guys are having some fun with your family, getting ready for the festivities tonight and tomorrow, and just having a good time. Today we're getting into a couple of small items that did get down, or did finally go down. Pete Fairbanks finally landing with the Miami Marlins on a one-year, $13 million deal with incentives. A couple other smaller deals we saw as well, but primarily we're going to focus on giving some Christmas presents to your favorite team. We're going to get into some free agents that they should try to sign, and see if we can get a trade candidate or two to go to your favorite team. Appreciate you guys joining us. Welcome in Andrew, Sir Centro, Armandus. Thank you guys for joining us on our Wednesday afternoon stream. Andrew, just want to say Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. Hopefully you're having a pretty good day at work. Sir Centro, good morning, good afternoon, Michael. Happy Christmas Eve. Let's go Dodgers, and welcome in Armandus. First bit of news is Pete Fairbanks going to the Miami Marlins, 1 year, $13 million with incentives. Surprising that the Marlins are the team that ultimately wins the bidding here. I imagine it's primarily because of the money going to him. Remember, the option that was declined by the Rays was actually around $11 million, so he actually beats the option that was turned down. So we'll have to see how the Miami Marlins bullpen ultimately holds up this year. The needs for the Marlins more were on the offensive side, so maybe this is them kind of bolstering their bullpen in anticipation of moving some pitching. We know that they've been talking quite a bit about some of these starting pitchers, Sandy Alcantara, Edward Cabrera, but they do have a couple of arms in that bullpen. You also have to think about the injury that they just had, Ronnie Henriquez going down for the entire 2026 season. They needed to get some veteran, I think another veteran back there at some point, but a little bit surprised that it's a Pete Fairbanks type at $13 million on a one-year deal. Now, there's no such thing as a bad one-year deal, but I still would like to have seen them try to acquire some more offense first. But maybe they're just seeing an opportunity here with the ability to offer more than other teams were on Fairbanks, get a really nice back-end reliever, and go forward from there. So good work by the Marlins, at least striking while the iron is hot and getting the deal done. Welcome in Brad, Harley, Sean, welcome in. Appreciate you guys joining us as well. Rangers need to get a starting pitcher. You just might find it underneath the Christmas tree for the Rangers today. So we'll get to the Rangers and all the other teams' Christmas presents here in just a moment. John Heyman said he thinks Bregman signs before the new year. I think it's going to be close one way or the other. I don't think it's going to take until late January, early February for Bregman. We saw how that fiasco worked out last year. He landed in a good spot, don't get me wrong, and he had a good salary for it. But he wanted that long-term deal. I just think that this market is being held up a little bit by Kyle Tucker trying to take a grand tour of all the teams that are interested. We knew that was coming, though. So we knew his market was going to be a little slower. We thought Bellinger might sign before Tucker, but according to reports around the winter meetings, Bellinger is waiting for Tucker to go. Now that's taken close to Christmas now, I wonder if both of those guys sign fairly quickly and then Bregman shortly thereafter. Jay Farrell, welcome in. Marlins may just be hoping to flip at the deadline. Very true. That would be another good arm for them to peddle at the deadline, and if it only costs them a little bit of money and they can get some long-term assets, obviously that would be a good option if they are not in contention. But the other thing this does for them is that it does soften the blow from the Players Association saying some of these small market teams do not spend in free agency. Well, we've seen the A's certainly pick it up. We've seen the Angels, who certainly have been at the top ends of free agency in the past, had seen their payroll kind of dwindle down after Shohei Ohtani leaves, and they have been ratcheting it back up a little bit here. Other teams like the Rays have been adding some payroll. The Orioles, teams that never really bid on these big-time free agents, are certainly adding some payroll. One team that hasn't so far is the Rockies. They shouldn't be. They're going to be a team mired in losing seasons for probably the next 2 or 3 years at minimum. But could be some interesting teams out there that make some surprising additions as a result of the CBA negotiations this coming off season. Sean, will Pete Fairbanks be a trade deadline candidate if the Marlins are Brad? He will be a trade deadline candidate. I don't anticipate the Marlins necessarily competing with the Dodgers for best record in the National League. I don't think they're necessarily going to compete for the division crown with the likes of the Phillies, Braves, and Mets. Could they hang around the wild card for longer than all of us expect? I do believe that's a legitimate chance here. They have some really good pitching. If they get the offense that they need, they could certainly hang around that wild card picture into late September. But if things go poorly, yes, he would make a fairly nice trade candidate at the deadline. All right, got about 30 of you guys with us already on a Wednesday afternoon. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe, as we're going to keep you guys up to date on all the latest from MLB's Hot Stove season. We're getting into MLB's Christmas presents, kind of give some presents to each team, some free agents, trade targets, and just see how their team could ultimately round out here in just a moment. But be sure to follow us on Facebook, Upside Sports Network, as well, to be notified when we do go live. Let me pull up our screen for you guys. Just going to double check and make sure nothing too major has happened in the last few minutes anyway, since I came on the air. Nothing really there. Some basketball news as they're getting ready for their Christmas Day games. A lot of talk about the prospects that were traded from the Astros to the Rays in that deal. Same thing with the Orioles. MLB trade rumors, the moves that we saw over the last 24 to 48 hours anyway. The Weaver deal became official anyway. McNeil goes out to the A's. We already talked about those. One that we didn't is the White Sox adding another nice reliever, former top prospect Sean Newcomb. More of a depth piece, veteran piece for the young arms in that bullpen to kind of learn from. Ryan O'Hearn, big free agent expenditure for the Pirates, and I say big because this is the first multi-year contract they've given out to a free agent in, 9 years, since 2016? 2 years, $29 million with incentives that could take it to $30 million overall. Nice job by the Pirates, at least adding around the periphery of this team. Nobody is necessarily an aircraft carrier, but they've certainly got a better offensive floor than they did, say, a couple of weeks ago. I still think there's more work to do. I think they will continue to add. The question is, do they move on from Keller here before we get to opening day? That'd be another way to address their needs offensively. And then what do they do with O'Neal Cruz long term? Do they keep him? Do they peddle him in a deal to get another type of a player? Do they go after one of the big bats that might be falling because nobody's willing to spend that kind of money on like a Bo Bichette? I doubt that's the case, but they've certainly spent more money this offseason than they have in recent memory. And again, probably driven by the CBA negotiations and with Paul Skeens being still on his rookie deal anyway, under control for 4 more years. You probably got 2 more years of prime Paul Skeens anyway to be able to make the most of that situation there in Pittsburgh. He's not going to stay there. So after 2 years, you're really going to have to look really hard to try to find a trade there. Otherwise, you're going to lose him for essentially nothing, like the Angels lost Shohei Ohtani, and that cannot happen in their situation. Armandus Fairbanks has a syndrome that cold weather causes his fingers to go numb and have trouble gripping the ball, so that limited his teams. Cold weather does cause a lot of pitchers who have spin and rely on curveball and not necessarily the fastball, but pitchers who rely on movement with their pitches to really struggle with that. So if that's really your game, northern teams or playing in October can be a little bit tougher for you. But Fairbanks was going to do well either way, no matter where he went. I don't necessarily think it, excluded northern teams from trying to go after him. We heard several different reports of different Northeast teams looking for him specifically. The Mets, the Yankees had kicked the tires at one point or another, even the Blue Jays, but also they're an indoor team, so I guess that would kind of take out the weather factor there. But either way, I don't think that the weather factor nearly impacted his free agency as say the dollar amount specifically. I think that's why he took the 1-year, $13 million deal from the Marlins, and that's the long and the short of it. He wants to have another great platform season, be able to peddle that into a long-term deal, which he was not able to do successfully this season, and go forward from there. But again, pitchers who pitch in the cold weather, who rely on curveball, who try to spot up location, or reliant on movement, those kinds of pitchers usually do struggle in those types of climates. Just look at the Colorado Rockies, how hard it's been for them to acquire any pitching who's been able to locate the ball in and outside the plate with curveballs or sliders or anything like that. If you're a fastball changeup guy, you can have a little bit more success in those types of climates. But something to kind of consider, I suppose. in any free agent's case, but I don't think that was limiting Fairbanks' teams that at least were interested on him. Who's next on the Cardinals to be traded? They traded 3 already. I would say it's going to be some combination of Arenado, Donovan, and Romero. I think those are the names that are left from Ken Rosenthal's article about 3 weeks ago that said that they were going to be moving on from Contreras and those other 3 that I mentioned. I would imagine Donovan's getting the most pub right now because the Mariners' interest. He's seen as a guy who can flex over to third and allow Young to play play second there in Seattle. The Red Sox have certainly pivoted off of Ketel Marte, according to sources, because of the asking price of the level of package that the Diamondbacks are asking for in return for Ketel Marte. Now, Donovan ain't going to come cheap, but it sounds like the asking price might be significantly less than that of Ketel Marte. Now, Marte, of course, is under a great contract, control for several more years. Marte's a little bit older. He's probably going to have a couple bad years at the back end of that deal, at worst. But anyway, the salary for him is just so much. The salary is so cheap that any team really could afford it. Even the Pittsburgh Pirates could acquire him and still be able to suffer through the final 2 years if he absolutely craters in those years. But those would be the names I would be looking for the Cardinals to be traded. Donovan would be the one I would expect to command the biggest return. Romero might get you something small, and then Arenado is more about just dumping the contract. They did a nice job of dumping the Contreras contract, not having to eat a whole lot of that deal, and getting 3 pitchers in return. Love the deal, love the trade itself for the Cardinals, but we'll see how things work out for those Cardinals. Start complaining about the Dodgers and tell your ownership to spend their revenue sharing money. Dodgers chipping in with 42% of the $403 million this year. They are certainly spending. The only thing I would say as far as how they are able to bargain for free agents versus how other teams are, they certainly have deeper pockets, but they also have the ability to draft just as well as these other teams. And they've certainly capitalized on that. Now, of course, having the name recognition certainly helps, having those 16, 17, 18-year-old kids go, hey, I'd rather play for the Dodgers than be able to play for the Pirates, and if the money's the same, I'd rather go play for the Dodgers. That's part of the argument there for some of the minor league guys coming in or some of the prospects that they're able to sign that they aren't necessarily drafting. But in the draft, you get the opportunity to draft who you think is the best player available, and they do a great job at drafting as well. There's very little that the Dodgers do that they do not do very, very successfully, and they should be commended for that. Now, as far as the CBA negotiations, I do think there'll be some curtailing of this deferred money. In that respect, I do agree with some of the smaller market teams that it does kind of create a unbalanced or unfair playing field. The tax should be the tax no matter what. If the Dodgers have all this money, then by all means go out there and spend it, but by no means should they be allowed to utilize future funds, or should any other team for that purpose. It's just curtailing the tax issue or tax issue for them, and revenue sharing and all those kinds of things. And while the smaller market teams certainly do benefit from that more than, say, a team like the Dodgers from the revenue sharing, I would like to see them at least have the same dollar-for-dollar commitment in free agency. If the Pirates are offering the same 2-year, $20 million deal to a free agent, and the Dodgers are offering the same 2-year, $20 million deal in present-day value, but they have deferred money on the back end that make the total value of $25 million, that's a little bit more of a wishy-washy thing to me. And I think MLB will curtail that. I'm not saying it's the complete worst thing that's ever happened in the game, but I do think deferred money has gotten a little out of hand. When you have more than $100 million in payroll obligations that are deferred into future years, are you really playing with the same set of circumstances that other teams are, where that $100 million may be about the same payroll as the entire team is currently for smaller market clubs? That's where I think MLB is going to have to kind of curtail that a little bit. I don't think they'll eliminate it completely. I do think they'll just limit it or put a cap on how much they can actually defer, whether it be $50 million into future years, whether it be $100 million. The Dodgers are well past whatever number I think they will put a limit at. But it might put an immediate freeze to the Dodgers from offering continued deferred money until they get that deferred money down even further. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. Hit that like and subscribe. Let's get into some Christmas presents for your favorite team. Let's go ahead and let's do it by, we'll just kind of go down the list here. We'll start with the Angels. What would I give the Angels for their Christmas present? We'll start with kind of just go alphabetically here, I suppose. For the Angels, I would like to see them get continued starting pitching. I would like to see them get younger as far as at the MLB level without pushing these guys too far. I'd like to see them solve their issues over there with the DH and right field with Mike Trout and Jorge Soler. But as far as the Angels go, for me, I would like them to see them go after a guy like Pete Fairbanks. When you are a rebuilding club, the one way you can really guarantee yourself some trade targets at the deadline to be able to recoup some prospects is to sign a bunch of low-cost guys. We're talking 1 year, $2 million, 1 year, $3 million contracts to a bunch of different relievers. Half of them won't work out, don't get me wrong. But the other half will, and you're going to spend about the same money if you would have gotten an elite option in that bullpen. If, like the Rangers last year, had a great guy in Sean Armstrong who had a fantastic year, you could have gotten a nice package of prospects in return for how successful he was last year. He's not a name brand by any means, but he certainly was very effective last year. And if the Rangers had decided to sell at the deadline, they could have commanded a hefty package in return for him. So for the Angels, I'd be looking some of these smaller contracts for the bullpen to kind of round that group out. Same thing in the starting rotation. A low-cost starting pitcher like Patrick Corbin last year for the Rangers, 1 year, $1 million. He would have been invaluable if the Rangers were deciding to sell at the deadline. Probably would have netted them a top 10 prospect out of somebody's system. Obviously, they were trying to win last year, and they decided to not go down that route. But in the end, the best way for teams to improve at the deadline is to try to jettison all their expiring deals, and why not try to load up on those guys? And then in the second half, after you've traded those guys, now you have an open roster to allow some of the guys who had a great minor league season at AAA and AA that look like they're ready to take the next step, now have a spot on the MLB roster to kind of see what they have and really see what you have to work with. Now, I'm not advocating pushing those guys if they're not ready, but I am saying if you have guys that are ready at the minor league level after you jettison these guys at the deadline, bring them up, let them show their wares, and if those guys certainly hit, then your team is obviously better going forward, and that allows you to not have to push these guys at the minor league level by signing these smaller contracts to a much better it allows you to sign them to a smaller contract, which is better for your roster overall. You acquire the prospects at the deadline, but it allows those younger guys to take their time to learn and to ultimately become the best prospects they can. How do you feel about the Green Kurt incident, and is it a big deal? Long list of issues between those two over the years. Do I think this is the latest in a long line of those? Yes. Do I think it'll end up being consequential? Probably not. I do think the team will take some kind of action against Draymond Green for walking off the bench, whether it be a small fine, whether it be some type of undisclosed punishment, or whether it be a suspension as kind of the extreme that some pundits out there are advocating. They will do something. I don't think it'll be anything worth reporting on. If worst case scenario, it is a suspension of, say, like 5-10 games at worst, that would be the most impactful one. More realistically, you're probably looking at a small fine and for them to handle internally. I don't think this is going to be the end of Draymond Green in Golden State. It's not working that way. He's a terrible player this season. He's got more fouls and he's got more turnovers than he does. I believe assists this year or points, something along those lines. He's had a really tough year. Will the Cubs add a hitter? The only one they added so far is Tyler Austin. They will. They will certainly add one hitter. But for the Angels, if we're looking at the free agent list, let me get that pulled up for you guys. All right. Now, the Angels, of course, could use a third baseman with the Rendon issues, but I think the best case, like Willie Castro, would be a great fit. But if I'm looking for the Angels at the this offseason, I'm looking for somebody who can be a low-cost option that you might be able to get something for at the deadline. Somebody like a Kendall Graveman, if he can show that he has the ability to throw again. Same thing with Green. Hunter Harvey has had his good moments. Those all would be good names. The one I would go for if I were in their shoes, though, would be Michael Kopech. He has the ability, when healthy, to be a dominant reliever. I think the days of him being a starting pitcher are over. But if he's right, he could be a multi-inning reliever a la a Josh Hader out of the bullpen. But the issue is he's had 2 major injuries to his throwing arm, and I'm not sure how much he's got left. That's why he's going to cost you dirt cheap to be able to bring him in. That would be one guy I would be trying to target as well. So that'd be one present I would give the Angels is Michael Kopech. The second one I'm going to give him one more reliever. And I'm going to go with... They've had Hunter Strickland before. Maybe they go back to the well. But I'm going to give him Jose Urena. Somebody they can use as the number 5 starter in their rotation or as a long reliever. He was very good a couple of years ago. Last year did not go so well. Bounced around from a couple of different teams. If he's able to latch on with the Angels and give them, say, a 4 ERA out of that number 5 starter spot, that could be something worth a small package at the deadline, whether it be a top 30 prospect or some guys that are just missing that window. He'd be another nice option for them. So there's your Christmas present if you're an Angels fan. Trade target, if I'm looking for the Angels, I'd be looking to take on bad money from other clubs. So teams that are kind of pinned up against it right now, I'd be trying to take advantage of the situation. Doesn't excite you for winning this year, but the Rangers are trying to, add some pieces this offseason. They're looking for a starting pitcher, right-handed hitting outfielder, looking possibly to improve at second base. If they were to say peddle Jock Peterson to the Angels, not say you're going to help your in-division team, but just as an example, if you took on Jock Peterson and ate, say, $5 million of that deal, you could certainly get yourself a nice piece in return. We're talking a A-ball starting pitcher prospect, but that's better than you already would have. And if Jock Peterson starts hitting better, hey, you got the Rangers eating the rest of that deal. Now he's a $5 million player. If he's hitting, say, 260 at the deadline, you turn around and trade him again, and now you get another asset. That's how the Oklahoma City Thunder did it in the NBA. That's how the Philadelphia 76ers did it during their process days. Teams that are rebuilding, I'm surprised, don't do more of this and try to go to more of the extreme on these types of things and try to just continue to churn assets, churn contracts until they finally get there and are ready to keep moving forward. Could the Warriors move on from Draymond? I seriously doubt it. Like I said, they've done this song and dance before. Oh, he did X, Y, and Z to a teammate. I mean, the dude punched Jordan Poole in the face. That was the time for him to be jettisoned off that roster. I'm sorry, that doesn't happen. And then they decide, hey, we're going to take Draymond's side, essentially, and we're going to trade away the immature player in Jordan Poole, and bye-bye he goes. Obviously, his career's never been the same. Draymond Green hasn't been the same, honestly, since then. Not saying it's because of that, but he just hasn't been a good player since then. Larry, when do you think the Yankees will make a move? They have been boring and they act like they are a cheap team. Every team in their division has made moves, but them, that is not a good thing at all. I would agree with you for the most part. Again, they did make one small move. They did bring back Ahmed Rosario. That doesn't move the needle, though. I get your point, though. They need to go a little bit bigger game hunting. I think they're waiting for these big guys to really sign, whether it be Bellinger, Imai, King already came off the board. I think they're waiting for that big group of free agents to sign. Then I think they're going to try to attack the trade market. I don't think they're going to try to go for these middling guys in free agency. So don't be surprised if they miss on these top targets in free agency, that they turn around and peddle some of their minor league prospects anyway for some MLB help. So we'll see what they do. I think they need to add some bullpen here after the couple of departures of Weaver and Williams. Bednar's a nice piece back there. Doval should help them in the middle, in the kind of setup role, but they need more. They need a fireman like Weaver. If they don't get one, I think this bullpen is significantly worse than last year. And the starting pitchers, while they're going to be getting Garrett Cole back at some point this year, they certainly are a deep group, but they could be deeper. That's why they're looking at some of these top-end starting pitchers. They've had injury issues each of the past couple of seasons, and we'll see, what ultimately happens for your Yankees. All right, let's keep going down the list. Second team, Astros. What do we give them as their Christmas present? First, I'm going to give them a trade, and that's going to be Christian Walker. First base is a position in demand in a couple of different spots. To me, a team like the New York Mets screams a Christian Walker fit here. They could easily take on the contract there and be able to not offer a whole bunch back to Houston in return. Honestly, I think that contract is a little bit underwater, but I think Christian Walker had a bad first year in Houston. I think he's a better player than he showed. His glove is certainly better. His bat is certainly better. I think they have a good team coming in New York. They certainly jettisoned a lot of their stalwarts, but they're going to have to do something, kind of pick up the pieces around this team, and they need to add some more potential here. Am I saying Christian Walker is the answer to all the ails of the New York Mets? No, they need starting pitching first and foremost. But for the Astros, they should be able to find a suitor for Christian Walker. They move him off the roster. They save the money there. They put Paredes over there at first base. Then you have an infield that looks something along the lines of Paredes, Altuve, or Williams, depending on who you decide to, or Matthews, if you decide to put him there. Pena and Correa over there at third. That's a pretty good infield as far as offense. Outfield still has question marks. What do they do with Myers? Again, I think the Royals have been the team that's been most connected to him, but they've added 2 outfielders so far this offseason. I don't see them exactly hungry for a third unless it's an impact player like Jarren Duran from the Boston Red Sox, but we've seen how those rumors have died out as well since they weren't willing to part with Cole Ragans. But for Houston, they move on from Christian Walker, free up some money here. Then I think they're going to try to figure out their offense a little bit in that outfield. I think they're going to try to add an outfielder either via trade, take on a shorter-term contract from another ball club to improve their outfield mix, or they're going to try to add somebody in free agency. The bullpen has been better, I guess is the best way to put it. It's had better seasons. Maybe they spend that money back there, but it sounds like they're a little bit cash-strapped right now. They're not going to bring back Framber Valdez. They could also target some starting pitching. That's not out of the realm of possibility. But for trade, I'm giving away Christian Walker. I don't think they necessarily need to add somebody unless it's for a trade that gives them some offense in the outfield. But for the trade, for their Christmas present, I'm giving Christian Walker away, and I'm going to say he goes to the Mets for a small package in return. All right, so what free agents could go to Houston in return as well? Again, I think they could use another bullpen piece. Ryan Stanek they've had before. Something like that would be a nice fit for them. Maybe a return of Ryan Presley. Maybe they buy low on some of these other guys like Neris or Montero, those kinds of guys. But I'm going to say Ryan Stanek goes there, and I'm going to give him one more bigger piece, I guess you could say, and I'm going to give him a hitter. They need somebody in the outfield. Starling Marte was great last year, had a nice resurgent season. I would like to see him in a competitive situation once again. He's a very good winning ball player when healthy, and I think he'd be very good in that Houston Astros outfield. Yordan Alvarez, of course, is the DH, so I don't think he'll get too many days off at DH. But for me, Starling Marte goes to the Astros as their Christmas present. Love that for their lineup. I think that would really lengthen out their group. They're not bringing back Kyle Tucker. That pipe dream is over anyway. Sir Central, has anyone seen Danny Duffy $8 million to a Loch Ness Monster? Does he even exist? Danny Duffy, if I remember correctly, was in the minor league system all season for the Rangers last year. I don't think he's with anybody at the moment. See, the Dodgers don't always make the right move. Or was he with the Dodgers last year? I can't remember. I remember he was with the Rangers with his former teammate Chris Young, bringing him on board the year they won the World Series. And I know he spent a year after that with them. I just can't remember if it was last year or the year before. In either event, he's not going to be too impactful this season on anybody's roster. So there's your Houston Astros Christmas present. The A's, I'm going to do more of what they just did with Jeff McNeil. I would do pretty much anything and everything to continue to add starting pitching prospects, a la what the St. Louis Cardinals did. I would look at the teams that were in on Ketel Marte and just see if I can find a way to pry one of those pieces that might have been more vulnerable loose from those clubs. I'm not necessarily looking to take on a short-term contract as kind of a one-year deal kind of a thing, a rental for them. I would be looking for more of a 2 or 3 year contract on a controllable pitcher. Even better if I can get him 4, 5, or 6 years of control, a really young starting pitcher. That would be my goal. So as far as a trade, I'd be taking on some money and seeing if I can get an MLB player back with some control in it. If you're looking at some of the worst contracts out there, Xander Bogaerts is one of them. I'm not saying they'd go get him, but that would be kind of that type of a frame of mind I would be looking first to try to take advantage of some of these clubs who've signed bad deals in the past. The term on Bogaerts I think would be way too much, but something along those lines I think would be impactful for the A's if they could get some really nice prospects in return. So if we're the A's and we go to a team like, who's had some bad contracts? Arenado, of course, you could take on from the Cardinals. That'd be interesting, but they would want assets back because they're willing to pay down on that deal to get it done. Who else is looking to save a little bit of money? Dodgers are looking to get off of some money so they can make some additions in free agency, but they don't have a whole lot of bad contracts. Teoscar Hernandez has had his name out there. He's got 2 years left on his deal. If the Dodgers are able to bring in a Kyle Tucker, Teoscar Hernandez could help you. Let's see here. You're not getting Edman. You might be able to convince them to get rid of Tanner Scott, give you another late inning reliever. That might be your best option after trading Mason Miller. So let's say they go and get Tanner Scott from the A's. $33 million. It ups their payroll, helps them look a little bit better in the CBA negotiations. Dodgers end up adding, say, a $3 million piece as far as value to make it worth it to them. It's not going to be a big piece, but they could do something along the lines of maybe a Cam Leiter, a Yang, Gavin Stone, who's been in the majors. That I could see that happening. Free up some roster spots there for Dodgers land. That way they can make some more moves in free agency. I would like that move. And essentially you send back over to the Dodgers, I don't know, the smallest piece you got, I suppose, if you're the A's. Just to kind of take on the money. Waldichuk was just DFA'd. Maybe you send him to the Dodgers and let them DFA him and see if they can get him right. Not a bad deal. A's get a reliever and a starting pitcher, or at least a guy that can use out of the bullpen and kind of grow with. Not a difference-making trade, but something that certainly gives them, if Tanner Scott rebounds, a very nice asset to peddle in years to come. As far as free agents for the Athletics, I'd be looking starting pitching, kind of a 4-5 type of a starter. If you could take advantage of the market being soft on some of these top-end guys like a Zach Gallen, go for it, but I doubt it. I think the more realistic option would be guys in the neighborhood of like a Corbin Burns, a Walker Buehler. In fact, Walker Buehler or Chris Bassett would probably be the guy I would try to shoot for. I don't think Bassett would sign there. I think he's going to try to sign with a contender. So Buehler would be the guy. I'd guarantee him a spot in my starting rotation. Say, hey, you'll be in my number 4 starter. And if things go poorly, so be it. If they work out, we'll try to peddle you to a contender, since you do have that competitive nature in you, and you do seem to rise to the occasion in October. That would be one of the names I'd be trying to acquire. Other names that they might try to get, I'd be looking for a guy like Nick Martinez, who can be a swing guy for you, be a number 5 starter, or a middle relief guy for you as well. That would be the types of players I'd be looking at if I'm the Athletics. All right, next team here. Let me clear this out here. We're doing the Blue Jays next. Well, they've already done a lot of their shopping. And so if you're a Blue Jays fan, you're going to love your Christmas present because you're getting the best one of the free agents. It's Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker is in box number 1. Go ahead and put him in there in that outfield and figure out what you're going to do with Santander later. But that's not all. Not only are you bringing in Kyle Tucker, we'll go ahead and say for purposes now, 10 years, $300 million, 10 years, $350, whatever the contract turns out to be. But I'm expecting 10 plus years of control on that contract. So what's the next present, you ask? I'm going to say it's Alex Bregman. I did not think I'd be saying this at the beginning of the offseason. I didn't even think I'd be saying it a week ago. But here we are. It's a different world, and Bregman certainly has a suitor there in Toronto, and I think he wants to win. Could he go to back to Boston? I think that's highly likely as well. Those two teams, to me, have. I'm not saying that they're the favorites by consensus or anything like that, but those would be the two teams I think he fits best with. Cubs certainly view him as their top potential target. Tigers had varying levels of interest last year, seem less interested this year. D-backs are interested, but come on, is he really going to go to Arizona? I seriously doubt it. I'm going to say they unwrap 2 of the top 5 free agents in the game this year. They signed Bregman to a 6 or 7 year deal, very similar to what they did with Dylan Cease, and they signed Kyle Tucker to a 10-year deal. This probably cements them at the top of that division, barring with what else the Yankees might do. But the Blue Jays certainly would have improved this offseason. Multiple top-end additions to this lineup and rotation. Bullpen, of course, they could still use another arm, in my opinion. But overall, this would certainly be a heck of an offseason for the Blue Jays if they could add, 3 of the top 5 in free agency? Dylan Cease, Kyle Tucker, and Alex Bregman. That's one hell of an offseason for the Blue Jays fans. They have the money to do it, and they very well could get that done. Jeff Passan expects them to get 2 of the 3 free agents. He mentioned Bregman, he mentioned Tucker, and he mentioned Bellinger. I think Bellinger to a lesser extent because of the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. already being there. But, of course, they could put Bellinger in the outfield just as easily as they could Tucker. But then they'd have some flexibility with what they want to do on the trade front. So on the trade front, that's where I'm going to get creative for my bullpen. Some of these players that have been moved out of position, like an Anthony Santander, probably would find his way out the door. Did not have a good year at all last year, and so fresh off of his terrible first year in Toronto, his contract of $31 million, their negative 18 value. That's a tough contract to give up, but that would be the one I'd try to peddle first. Another one that they will move on from is Jose Barrios. You look at the negative contract or the negative value there. I do think with the need for starting pitching, they will be able to peddle him easier than a Santander. But there's probably going to have to add some assets here. As far as something that might be a little bit more enticing to them, though, I think it's going to be a reliever. Somebody who can be a 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th inning option for them. Hold on, something just came through from Steve Kerr. I know you guys were asking about that just a minute. He hopes to see Draymond retire as a Warrior. Monday was not my finest hour, and that was the time I needed to be calm in the huddle, and so I regret my actions in that exchange. I apologize to Dre. He apologized to me. We both apologized to the team. Told you it's going to be pretty much nothing. They're going to make it up, or make up here. Sir Central, well, will Rasmus Anderson end up? Dallas. They've been talking about it for about a year with the Sagan injury. I just think they're going to wait until February to get that deal done. Unless a team bowls them over before they get to that time. I think Rasmus Anderson ends up in Dallas as their number 3 or 4 defenseman, depending on how you view Lindell versus Rasmus Anderson. I love both of them. I think Lindell is probably the top or one of the top defensive defensemen in the game. Highly undervalued by almost everybody outside of Dallas. Stanley, what other moves will the Mets make? We'll get to their Christmas presents in just a moment. We're kind of going down the list here. They'll be probably kind of in the middle of our video today is when we get to them. But what other moves will they make? They will be making quite a few. This is still a work in progress for your New York Mets. All right, back over to our trade. I would be looking for a reliever if I'm the Blue Jays, just kind of help out my bullpen one more step here. And I would be looking at a team like the San Diego Padres. Now, they, of course, have Mason Miller, but that's not the only option that they have that can throw some high leverage game or high leverage innings for you. Let me go to the MLB side of things. Page number 1. Okay. Mason Miller, 43. I don't think you're going to be able to get there and still be able to field the same roster that you have now. I think you're going to have to get creative with that bullpen. So, Morejon, I think, makes a lot of sense. A one-year contract. I think the Padres would like to flip that for more control on a player. So that would be one player I'd be trying to target. He was arguably one of, if not the best reliever last year. I think there were others that were better, but his numbers certainly looked great. I would put him in this package. And then I would try to see if I could get one more reliever out of this system. Ramon Laureano to kind of help out in their outfield. Don't really see that one happening. Morgan, he looks like a nice piece that they're looking to have a future with there in San Diego, so you're not going to get him. But if we go a little bit cheaper here, you might have seen this trade before with the Rangers in mind. But if the Blue Jays, this is the trade I would try to make. You get two relievers, Jason Adam and Morejon. You lock up the 6th, 7th, and 8th essentially with the arms you already have back there. And those would kind of help strengthen your bullpen. Now, what would you have to give up? It ain't going to cost you a whole heck of a lot. So you get down to this range here. I think you're looking maybe a 20-year-old outfielder possibly. They've been looking for a nice fit there. And I think if you give up a starting pitcher with, a nominal value here, not like a TJ Brock, but something along the lines of maybe a Santos. Try to find like a 19-year-old guy. Nobody really in that category for them. Let's go to one more page. Those are the negative value guys. I'll throw in Bowen Francis. Interesting. Actually, that might be really interesting. Use Bowen Francis in this deal. Where was he? He's got 4 years left of control. Would help out very cheaply in that Padres rotation. This is kind of an MLB for MLB trade here. I kind of like this one. I would do this trade if on both sides. You get a prospect that you like if you're the Padres and Bonilla, and a starter to go in your rotation. Probably as your number 5 starter, if I had to guess, with Bowen Francis. And you get 2 middle relievers if you're the Blue Jays for a starting pitcher you're not going to utilize. I like this move. I'm going to go ahead and post it, actually, because I think that's actually a pretty fair deal. So your free agency, you get Kyle Tucker, you add Alex Bregman, now you add it to your bullpen. The only thing left would be to figure out what you're going to do with Santander and the rest of that group, but overall, you don't even have to do anything if you don't want to, but that's a really deep team if they make this type of move on top of adding those 2 pieces. That's your Christmas present if you're a Blue Jays fan. All right, let's keep it going here on to the next club, and that's going to be the Atlanta Braves. Braves have already had a very active offseason, and I think they need starting pitching still. To me, that's the biggest, absolute necessary must-have. Of course, you'd love to see them go after a Framber Valdez or a Zach Gallen, but I'm going to give them somebody who kind of fits the mold of what they've gone for in the past. Chris Bassett, to me, fits along the lines of Charlie Morton, fits along the lines of Chris Sale. Probably a 2-year deal, probably a number 3 starter currently. If he has a great season, maybe he's up to number 2. If he's poorly, then you're probably, putting him down in the minors, or at least optioning him out, or seeing what else you have. You have some options to work with, but they need starting pitching. So Chris Bassett on a 2-year or 1-year deal with an option, maybe a team option of like $25 million. That way, Bassett would still be willing to take the team option in there because of the AAV in that last deal. If I were the Padres fans, I would not be happy in trading DeVries for Mason Miller just to flip him. What do you think? Thankfully, I'm not a Padres fan. I wouldn't be happy about flipping Miller either, but what the value was that they gave up to give Mason Miller, just like Luka trade in Dallas, you can't equate what you're giving up into what you're getting in between 2 different trades. The cost is already there. You can only move forward from there. So Mavericks fans, as unhappy as they are about Luka being gone, you can't turn around and say, well, we can't trade AD because we're not getting Luka value for him. You're not going to get Luka value for him. The prospects that you gave up for Mason Miller were more valuable than Mason Miller himself. He's still a very good player and still a highly valuable player, just like Anthony Davis, but you're not going to have the same value that he would if he was the guy you were trading away. But Bassett would be the first guy I would have going to the Braves. The next one I'd be looking for is a guy who can be a little bit of a swingman for you, be a long reliever if necessary, but also a starter. Because to me, this starting pitching group is not good enough. They need more depth there with the injuries that they've suffered. So I'd be looking for a lottery ticket guy, somebody like Jordan Montgomery. I'm not sure how good he'd be out of the bullpen, so I'd be a little leery about that one. Cal Quantrill has shown the ability to kind of do both over the years. Stroman certainly has had his better years, but he'd be another number 5 starter I could see them trying to target. Urquidy has had his day in the sun. Verlander, he's not coming out of the bullpen. For me, let's see if there's another option here. Savali, Corbin, DeSclafani, Zach Eflin. Maybe a Zach Eflin type. That'd be interesting. Gonsolin's had his good days and bad. Jakob Junis, I really like as a player. Didn't have the greatest season last year, but certainly has shown the ability to be a good starter at times with Milwaukee. I'd probably go Jakob Junis as my second free agent target for the Braves. And then on the trade front, what else could they do? We've talked about their need at shortstop with Kim being locked in there for 1 year. They by no means have that position solved. So could they add a shortstop? I think they're going to look more likely to the offseason next year to solve that position long term. I think they're going to wait for the new CBA and see if they can take advantage of another club. So other teams, other players I could see them targeting via trade. They tried to beef up this bullpen. I think they've done a nice job. They got some nice infield depth options. I think if I'm the Braves, I still would not be completely satisfied with my pitching. In that case, the trade target I'm thinking of, if you move Junis to the bullpen completely, you go after another starting pitcher, and you go to the Miami Marlins. Now, they have plenty of starting pitching. Which one do you think they should go for? Yuri Perez isn't going anywhere. Cabrera, I think, would cost quite a bit. I'm not sure the Braves would be comfortable paying the price. I think a Max Meyer, as far as a prospect, would be fantastic for the Braves to acquire. But I need somebody who's ready to pitch in the big leagues right now. I'd love to have him long term, but right now we need more talent on the active roster. Ryan Weathers kind of fits. Gusto is kind of a depth option, kind of fits. Phillips is more a reliever now. So Weathers would probably be the guy. Another team that has a couple of guys that you might want to check in on are going to be the Athletics. We talked about their need for some starting pitching, but if you took advantage of them bringing in Severino last year, I think the money would be a little bit ominous for them to try to bring in. And then you go to the Cubs, who they're going to add some starting pitching, and they need more, but they also have Jameson Taillon on a 1-year deal. It's not going to cost you a whole lot to acquire him. I think he's the odd man out in this rotation as currently constructed. I think they're going to add 2 starting pitchers, which means Jameson Taillon will be readily available. If you bring him in as a number 5 starter, they've done trades in the past between these 2 ball clubs. What would this trade kind of look like here? It's not going to cost you a whole lot. I'm not going to say a bag of magic beans, but something in that neighborhood anyway. I would give them a young starting pitcher prospect, Arisqueta, I guess I will call that one. Could be the guy that you go back. The other option you have is, of course, going with an MLB player. Brujan, I don't really see that as a fit. Dylan Dodd, I saw that as an option, but no. Kind of like this trade here. You get Jameson Taillon. You could even throw another, A-ball or rookie ball prospect here, and that gets the trade done. You like Joe Kelly? Site according to Rosenthal, Bowden, Galazos there, saying that Miami is thinking of keeping Sandy, but still trading Edward. We hear those kinds of different rumors all the time on those guys. How about the Padres for a trade for Cabrera? Like I said, we're going to go through all these teams, so we'll get to those clubs here in a minute. Upside, do you see the reports that the Yankees might be willing to trade Jason Dominguez for an established starter? Do you agree with that? I don't. I think this is more lip service to the free agents that are out there, telling them to, sign a less lucrative deal. I think that's part of the reason why Michael King went back to the Padres, is that he didn't find a contract to his liking from the three teams that were quote-unquote finalists for him. Yankees were part of that. And if they're willing to unload Jason Dominguez, I would call their bluff and say, hey, go ahead and do it. I don't think they will. All right, let's keep going down the list here. We've done the Braves. Next up is going to be the Milwaukee Brewers. What's going to be underneath their Christmas tree? Well, I think the trade is going to be a player going out the door. I think that's going to be Freddie Peralta. Did not think that was going to be the case, at the beginning of the winter meetings, but there's been so much hubbub around it that the industry is now expecting a deal there. Now, what could he bring you in return? You're not going to want to trade your ace for anything less than high-quality return. So what do you go? Where do you go? I'd be looking at the Mets. I'd be looking at David Stearns and being like, hey, buddy, we have your former ace right here. How interested are you in this player? You need starting pitching in spades right now. What would you give us in return? So I would send Freddie Peralta to the Mets. Mets finally at a starter here. Now remember, you have to get up to around 25 value. I don't think you're going to give up Tong in this deal. I think you'd save him for a bigger deal. But I think that if you find a way to trade some of these middling prospects that are now blocked at least in some degree on the big league roster, Vientos, Acuna, players like that, I think they should, and we'll find a trade partner that way. But what could they give in this type of a trade? Clay Holmes was not very good in his first year. We've seen better from him anyway, I guess is the best way to put it. Boston Barrow, I think, could be a part of the package as far as a position player, but I think they would want a starting pitcher back. So who's on the major side of things that you can get a starting pitcher with a little bit of control? Senga, of course, 2 years left, but making a little bit of money. Not exactly preferable for a team not willing to spend a whole bunch of money. But if you can rebuild his value, that'd be great. I think David Peterson would be a great guy to fit into that rotation. And I think they're holding on to Tong for something else. So Peterson might have to be the guy that goes back the other direction. And that gets you fairly close. So you need, what, another $5 million player here? If you throw in Acuna, does that make it a little bit more enticing of a deal? If you're the Mets, do you do this trade? Jonah Tong, I think he's just too valuable. Even for a one-for-one trade, Peralta has nominal value ahead of him. I'm not trading a guy who has nominal value better than one of my best prospects and a guy I view as an MLB starter starting this season. So this would be the kind of trade I could see happening. They trade kind of a middle to back end of the rotation starter, a blocked piece in Acuna, speedy guy, and Boston Barrow in exchange for 1 year of Freddie Peralta and see if I can sign him to an extension, probably a 2 or 3 year extension upon his arrival there in New York. So there's a trade for you, Mets fans, Brewers fans. We'll validate it, fair trade, post it. And there's one starter back to the Mets. They also filled their hole in the rotation with the Brewers. We saw them kind of do this with Devin Williams. They took a strength, peddled it to help improve a weakness. Now they've at least given themselves a longer runway. Could they do anything with these prospects or put in other prospects of a similar value? Sure. But I think the piece getting Peterson back at least stabilizes your rotation so you don't have too much of a backslide from the loss of Peralta. All right. So in free agency, what would they go after? Remember, they're not going to spend at the top of the market. But I think they could be looking for a number 5 starter, somebody who could be a nice piece for them, or a bullpen piece. Michael Lorenzen kind of fits that to a T. I'm not sure how valuable he would be specifically to the Brewers, but he would be number 1, low-cost option to help them improve. Now, they have kind of an outfield glut as well. I would like to see them add a little bit more power somewhere in that lineup. If they could find it, I'd love for them to go get it via trade, maybe a Jorge Soler. He has negative trade value, but maybe you could take advantage of that situation, see if you could get something out of that Angels system. I wouldn't do it if I'm the Angels. In free agency, though, I would look at maybe a Max Kepler, a Willie Castro. But on the pitching side, I still would like to continue to add to my young relief pitching. Maybe bring in a veteran that I could, just kind of shepherd these guys. Doesn't need to be a great pitcher, but somebody who's been there, done that, and can at least hold his own for one more season. Like a Jose Leclerc screams future Brewer to me. Guy off of a injury-filled career anyway, who's had his good moments and bad, but he would be a nice option for them on a 1-year, $3 to $4 million contract. Jose Leclerc, Michael Lorenzen, not going to move the needle there, and they trade away Freddie Peralta. What do you mean? This is a team that was competing last year. They were, best in their division. Why are they trading away and signing small pieces? Because it's what the Brewers do, and they always seem to do really well in these types of moves. Brad, I would do that for Peralta for as a New York Mets fan. I would hope so. You need starting pitching. I mean, if you guys are so thirsty for starting pitching right now, like you're going to have to pay through the nose. I was trying to keep it as fair as I could. I'll put it that way. But if you're not going to do it free agency, teams are going to try to realize your desperation for starting pitching and take advantage of it. And that deal was pretty fair. I do not think that'll be the deal you ultimately settle on. I think you're going to have to pay a little bit more of a premium, but nothing too crazy to get a deal done. Anthony, I can see them going after Giolito or Heaney, maybe. Dodgers got Diaz from the Mets and will get Bo from the Blue Jays. I seriously doubt it, but welcome in. Appreciate you guys joining us. We're going through every MLB team, kind of giving them some Christmas presents, giving them a couple of free agents and one trade here as well. We've kind of going down in alphabetical order. Right now, we just did the Brewers. So next up is going to be the St. Louis Cardinals. We can already figure the trade. It's got to be Nolan Arenado. And so who would be a fit here? To me, I'm going to go right back to the well, and I'm going to go with the Boston Red Sox. They've already taken off 2 big contracts from the Cardinals team. They've already exchanged lots of names between the 2 ball clubs. I could see them trying to land a third baseman like Nolan Arenado instead of spending big on a guy like Alex Bregman. Of course, that would still, I think, reinvigorate them to try to bring in Ketel Marte, but we shall see. Maybe even a Brendan Donovan could be a fit here as well. But I think Nolan Arenado is the most likely here to go to Boston. We'll get into a Brendan Donovan trade here in just a moment because I know you guys Cardinals fans will be really excited about where I have him going. But Nolan Arenado, negative $15 million. He's got 35 left on his deal. So if you offer, say, $20 million, around the neighborhood of what the Cardinals are willing to offer a year ago to offload his deal, now you can get something of value back. I'm not saying it's going to be a lot, but you could get a grab bag of pieces. I would look for one headlining piece, so something around a 3 value or so. Something in this range here. They're looking for starting pitching. I'd go with the 18-year-old starting pitcher. No idea if he's going to be any good or not. I would look for another young guy, starting pitcher preferably. Hector Ramos as a shortstop would be an interesting one, so I'll do that. And then we'll go really cheap on it, just for the final piece of this trade. Nobody young enough in that one. 21 Encarnacion, something to throw at the wall. Would you do this if you're the Cardinals? I would. Getting 2 lottery tickets and a absolute scratch off with Encarnacion. But you're getting off of the money of Arenado, and you're getting 3 pieces for your future. You're also freeing up playing time for some more of your young guys, and I would love this trade if I'm both sides, honestly. Boston ends up paying roughly $20 million, $15 million to Arenado over the next 2 years. Not too bad overall. Upside, what are your thoughts on my Marlins signing Pete Fairbanks on a 3-year deal with a 2-year player option according to reports? It was a 1-year, $13 million deal the last I saw. Did something change? Yeah, it's 1-year, $13 million deal, Anthony. Andy, assuming the Jays sign Tucker, then Bo will be off the Blue Jays board. Not necessarily. I do think they have the ability to walk and chew gum still, even after a Kyle Tucker deal. But bigger salary would be a little tougher. I get your point there than say a $1 or $2 million player to kind of fill up the roster the rest of the way. But I wouldn't close the door necessarily on it. Jeff Passan expects them to get 2 of the big 3 out there: Bellinger, Bregman, and Tucker. I would put Bo Bichette in that group to kind of make it 2 of 4. But I do think they will certainly add Kyle Tucker. I think that one, to me, I don't really hear anybody else really being even close on this one. So we'll see where they go. Dodgers could trade Rushing and Freeland for Donovan. They could. I think he'd be a highly valued player across the league, including with the Dodgers, which is why I think other teams might outbid the Dodgers to keep him away. Not necessarily just to keep him away there, but so that they could have him on their team. Prices will be high. All right, so there's our trade for Arenado. I'm going to go ahead and post that one. We're going to do one more trade for the Cardinals, and that's going to be Brendan Donovan. The team that I have him going to is the Seattle Mariners. This one has been talked about quite a bit, and I think the fit here with the Cardinals makes a lot of sense. So his value currently 32.5, a lot less anyway than what Ketel Marte's price is, which is why he's a little bit more reachable. And the Mariners have done a nice job being traders all the time. They're always finding a deal one way or another. Now, could they go after a guy who could take over at some point for Donovan in that infield? Sure. But I think they're still looking starting pitching. So if they can get a package centered around it, I think that would be their preference. But let's see here. Where could we go? I think Ryan Sloan makes a lot of sense as kind of a headliner of this package. If you could get both of these guys as far as starting pitchers, I would have that be the primary pieces I get in return. Two high-quality starters that you could probably put in your rotation day one, or at least close to it sometime this upcoming season. You're still going to need just a hair more value, and it's not going to cost a whole heck of a lot. But I'm just trying to think of a trade that would make it worth it for the Cardinals and outbid all the other clubs. A lottery ticket like Martinez would make some sense. Let's go a little bit more value, though. Maybe a competitive balance pick. There we go. That would do it. I would do that trade in a heartbeat if I'm the Cardinals. Two really nice pieces. I don't think Sloan is a future ace, but I do think he's a mid-rotation starter at best. Durangelo, I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name, but I would probably view him as more of a number 2 type starter at some point for Brendan Donovan. If both of those guys become long-term starters for you, this is a win for you for 2 years of Brendan Donovan, who's probably got 3, maybe 4 years left in him. I don't think he's going to command a huge free agent contract after this 2 years is up anyway. So the Mariners in this trade get him for the 2 years, and then I think they would be able to lock him up for probably a 3 or 4 year deal after that, because he's going to be coming off of an age 31 season where I'm still expecting him to play very well. The next contract he signs, a couple years of that will be bad money, but overall, really like this trade for the Cardinals. So there's kind of your Christmas there for the Cardinals. On the free agent side of things, I'd be looking for small, short-term contracts with upside. On the pitching side, if I don't fill up my rotation via trade, I'd be looking at, a Chris Paddock type who can be moved to the bullpen if he's horrible. I'd love a veteran guy, that somebody who's proven and can kind of take over the mantle as the number 1, like a Ranger Suarez, at least in the short term. But I don't think they're going to spend that kind of a money. So a more realistic free agent target for them, I think it's going to come in the bullpen. I think you're going to be looking along the lines of, let's see here. I think Danny Colon makes a lot of sense here. Andrew Chafin makes a lot of sense. They just traded away their first baseman. Could they bring in a Paul Goldschmidt for a reunion? Maybe. Nathaniel Lowe on a buy low candidate, I think would be a great option for them. Carlos Santana, but he's 40 years old now. I would go Nathaniel Lowe. Give him platoon duty over there first until he shows he's back to being the Nathaniel Lowe we saw going to the World Series with the Rangers. If he doesn't do that well, obviously you can move on from him because he's not going to cost you a whole heck of a lot. The other one I would try to sign would be Kazuma Okamoto. But I'll give them Nathaniel Lowe for now. And I think the other one I gave them was, I can't remember who the other one was off the top of my head. Was it another pitcher? Paddock? Yeah, it was Paddock I was talking about. So I'll give them Paddock and I'll give them Nathaniel Lowe on the free agent side of things. And the trades are where it's at for the Cardinals. How about Edwards to the Dodgers trade for Paul? Oh, wow. That's a big trade package, though. I'm not sure they would do that. I think Paula has too much value. Andy, would you trade Jose Barrios and Joey Lupafito to the Angels for a younger top 100 pitcher? I think you're mistaken on Barrios' value. I think the site is as well. They've got him at negative 40, but including a Joey Lupafito in that deal doesn't necessarily offset the negative contract value for him. I do still think you could get something for him. I think if you did Barrios and say, $15 million, I think you could get a decent pitcher back, a top, 30 prospect out of somebody's system, but by no means are you getting a top 100 guy anywhere near the return for a Jose Barrios. That's just not happening. Now, if you're talking a couple of back-end bullpen arms in the minor leagues that are in the late 20s in their prospect pool there for a specific team, I could see that. All right, so let's keep it going here. We just did the Cardinals. Let's do the next one. We got some Cubbies fans. I think they're the next one. Yep, the Cubs are next. This is where things get interesting because this is going to tell you a lot of where the rest of the Christmas presents are going to go. For them, I'm going to give them Justin Verlander on a 1-year deal going to the Chicago Cubs as Christmas present number 1. They need multiple starters to me. This cannot be done in one off season. This is going to have to take some time, I think. They get a short-term starter. They're going to move on, I believe, from Jameson Taillon at some point this offseason, maybe in that trade that we made for the Braves. So if I'm going big game hunting, I would say Zach Gallen would be the option I would try to get. I'd say Framber Valdez would be the option I would try to get. But I think they ultimately miss on both of those guys. The last one would be Imai. And this is where Cubs fans, your prayers are answered. You win the sweepstakes for Tatsuya Imai. So you get yourself a number 1, or at least a pseudo number 1, depending on how he fares when he comes over to the big leagues. You have a really nice, deep group at that point. To me, they still need more pitching, but I think this group would be enough to be able to get them at least in contention for a wild card this season. They don't necessarily need to add an Alex Bregman to be competitive offensively. It's the pitching staff that they really need. So there's their 2 pitchers that they get. They get 2 guys I view as middle of the rotation arms at best. Imai more towards the top. Andy, who will sign Imai? Cubs, Yankees, or Giants? My guess, still the Cubs, just barely right now. But I think there's so many teams that are still in on his market that it's not just the finalists that were mentioned of the Yankees and the Cubs. How about this? Sirota, Harlan, and Morales for Cabrera? No, too much. I think Sirota and Morales is still too much. And then including Harlan in that? No. So you're going to have to go way down on that. Now, if your starting point is Morales, Harlan, and a piece, then we'll get the ball rolling there and see what other pieces you want to add or take away, those kinds of things. But I'll say Imai and Verlander go to the pitching staff of the Chicago Cubs. As far as a offensive piece, of course you could say Eugenio Suarez could be the bat that they try to bring in. Outfield, maybe they try to move on from Ian Happ. They could move on from Nico Hoerner. Lots of options for them to do. If we're not counting the Jameson Taillon trade as the trade for the Cubs, I would look to their outfield and Ian Happ. I think they could get a nice return for him. I would look to pretty much any team that needs outfield help. I would look at the Mets and see if you could incentivize them or try to get them to offer on him instead of a Luis Robert. But either way, they should do very well. Let me get Happ in here. 0.8 value. Not going to cost a whole heck of a lot. But I do think it'll cost something. Let's say you go with 19-year-old starter. And then what's on the major side of things that you could give up if you're the Mets? Manaya, Senga. Senga would be a little bit too rich on. There's no such thing as too much starting pitching. But if they've already added those 2 starters, I don't think they'll bringing in a Kodai Senga. So if you go to the relief side, something that could make some sense for them, you ain't moving on already from Devin Williams. You just signed him. Minter, no. Nothing really fits there too well. So what does fit off of this Majors roster? Tyrone Taylor is kind of a depth outfielder in return and allow your young guys to play. That would make some more sense. That'd be closer. Brooks Raley. I couldn't even tell you how he did last year. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it would be an interesting reliever to kind of come back the other way. Gerber, not really moving the needle though. Maybe it's just kind of free up a roster spot more than anything else with Gerber. Would I do that if I'm the Mets? Hell yeah. Would I do that if I'm the Cubs? Probably not. Let's go a different direction instead of Ian Happ. Boyd is in the last year of his deal. Horner could be a guy and has some value as well. Second base market is moving. Let's say they trade Horner, but not to the Mets. The Red Sox are looking for a second baseman, and instead of paying the price for a Ketel Marte, say they go after a Nico Horner on a short-term contract. What would the return have to be? What would be worth it for the Cubs? Looking around 16 at the high. You're not including Cassis or anything like that. Those guys are pretty much untouchable to me. So then you get down to the Justin Gonzalez's of the world, and no thank you. I would look for a young starting pitcher. A guy like Marcus Phillips would make some sense. There's your first piece. You keep that pipeline going with Rivas, maybe. Gets you to 15. No. Valera started out okay, ended up not going well last year. So let's say they include Valera, kind of a buy low, and then they finish it out with Rodriguez. He did very well when he came back from surgery. Okay, good. I know he's a good reliever. I just couldn't remember how he finished last year. Are there any relievers you could see the Marlins trading after getting Fairbanks? I think they're going to be trying to figure out what they're going to do offensively first. That and what they're going to do with the starting pitching second. But there's our deal. Red Sox add Nico Horner. Cubs free up a roster spot in that infield. They move Shaw back over to second. And now if they wanted to, they could bring in Eugenio Suarez in free agency. So there's your Christmas if you're the Chicago Cubs. You land Verlander, you land Imai, you land one other third baseman for me, that would be Eugenio Suarez. You move on from Horner and get some nice pieces back and free up some roster flexibility as well. All right, let's go to another team here. Going to be live for probably another half hour or so, and then we'll probably finish our Christmas presents for teams tomorrow. We'll try to get through at least half the list today. Second best reliever after Diaz. Well, good. He was a very good high-end setup guy before that. I just didn't see how he finished the season. How about this trade for the Dodgers? Cabrera for Sirota, Morales, and Wagner? No. Still too much. Sirota and Morales for Cabrera alone is too much to me. Now, if you're saying Sirota and a couple of smaller prospects, sure. If you're saying Morales and a couple of medium prospects, maybe. Next up after the Cubs is the Arizona Diamondbacks. So in free agency for them, I'm going to give them a position player. I don't think they get Bregman, obviously, but I do think they could use some talented players. Somebody who could give them good at-bats, could be flexible and play all over. Harrison Bader in the outfield, but they already have that kind of a person in that mix already, but this would be the right-handed equivalent of an Alek Thomas. Miguel Andujar played really well last year, hitting left-handed pitching. He would be an option I would look at. Mark Canha as kind of a depth option for your infield, outfield as well. So I'll say Mark Canha on a buy low candidate would be one guy I think they should go after. So Mark Canha comes in, at least raises the floor for you. You still need some starting pitching, but I'm guessing they're going to try to acquire that via trade. I don't think they're going to spend too much more in free agency on starters. So that leaves relievers. Where do they go to kind of round out their bullpen? I'll give them an Evan Phillips and see if they can kind of have a reclamation project on their hands from injury and kind of go forward with those guys. The more interesting side of this for the Diamondbacks is obviously the trade. What are they going to do with Ketel Marte? Now, get ready. This is going to get very interesting very quickly. So we've already given Horner to the Red Sox. But if I'm the Diamondbacks, the Red Sox to me are the team I would prefer to do business with. Same thing with the Rays. The Rays already traded Shane Baz, but they still have plenty of pitching that they could go with to trade for Ketel Marte. Marte's value, 69, so it ain't going to be cheap. Okay? If you're the Rays, the offer was said to include Baz and Pipio. Pipio would probably now be the headliner of this package. You don't really have too much in the way of MLB ready starting pitching ready to go here. You could include Hopkins in this, but I think you'd be adamant about keeping him in this deal. Pipio, to me, because he's got 3 years left, is why he makes sense in this deal. So then you get down into this range here. Rasmussen found himself on the trade block a little bit last year. 2 years left on his contract. I don't think he really fits with what the Diamondbacks are looking for in return. I think they want younger, or at least more dominant starting pitching. Shane McClanahan, I think, has a higher ceiling, but I don't think you're getting him. Could you get an Anderson Brito? He's not exactly MLB ready yet, but he's certainly got a nice value. I think that would also be a no. Melton, I think he's going to be a mainstay in that Rays lineup for years to come. That's a no. So then you get to Gary Gill Hill, 21-year-old starting pitcher. I don't know how close he is, but they need starting pitching. This would be the first piece I don't think would hurt them in their system to be able to bring him in. So you bring in the starting pitcher. Let me look at the majors side of the things for starting pitchers for the Rays and just see who's a low value that might be an interesting fit. They don't really have much, and if they're trading away Pipio, that means they're going to have to bring in more starters here. Kind of tough to get there with those pieces. If we look at the Red Sox, the other team that's been connected to them the most often, you could include some of these guys here. But I think your package probably starts with some combination of Early and Witherspoon. And you're still 29, 28 away. So you need a couple more nice pieces thrown in here. Say a piece like Cassis would be an interesting one. In fact, I'm going to do that since now he's blocked over there at first base. So use Cassis in this deal to get closer. Now you still need about another 10, 11 in this deal to make it go. Maybe go after Justin Gonzalez, give you another bite at the apple for first base. Not saying that's the best use of your resources, but that would be one way to go about it. Another option would be taking out Cassis and bringing in Christian Campbell. Basically, you're taking on the risk that they took last year by signing him to that extension and hoping he can become Ketel Marte someday and just allowing him to be young. That's honestly a fairly interesting piece. And then if you then did Gonzalez here, that trade would make a lot more sense if I'm the Diamondbacks. You get 2 starting pitchers, one who immediately goes into your rotation, Witherspoon, who's probably there around the All-Star break. You get Campbell, who's ready to take over now for Marte, unless, of course, you want to let him get seasoned a little bit more at AAA. And Justin Gonzalez, another bite at the apple for a long-term first baseman. Not too bad. B. Lee, welcome in. My Christmas wish, Tucker to the Jays. My dream, Tatis to pair with both Tucker and Vladdy. Won't happen, but you can dream, absolutely. Sugar plums and whatever else dancing through their heads. 'Twas the night before Christmas, But if you guys missed the earlier Blue Jays, I did have the Blue Jays landing with Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman via free agency, and then doing a couple of interesting moves. I had a couple other trades as well, but one I did for the Blue Jays. If you guys want to check that out, please rewind and just check that out when you get time later. But I think that would end up being the trade there if they don't do the Nico Hoerner trade. I'm going to validate this trade and post it. See what kind of reaction we get on the site. But overall, not a bad option. Just your thought of Ketel to the Mets. I know he doesn't fit defensively, but could you do it anyway? I can look at it. I mean, he doesn't really fit over there at second, so he would probably have to be pivoted off at third, which means Beatty is going to have to move likely in this deal or in a subsequent deal thereafter. So the Mets and Diamondbacks, you're going to have to give up a hefty price to get him, and they want MLB-ready starting pitching. And that's the scary part if I'm the Mets, because that starting pitching is necessary for you. The Diamondbacks are looking for 2 starting pitchers, high-quality starters coming back, at least with long-term control left on their deals. Mets, they're looking for 2 starters, period, at the top of their rotation. That's the worry for me. So if I'm the Diamondbacks and I go to the Mets and I'm looking for a trade, I'm not settling unless I get one of those elite starting pitchers. We talked about Mason Miller and Nick Pivetta possibly going from the Padres in the past anyway to the Mets in exchange for some of these top arms. So Jonah Tong would have to be the ask in here. But that only gets the ball rolling about a third of the way here. It's going to cost a hefty amount for him. So if then you bring in Beatty as kind of the replacement for Marte in the lineup, you move Lawler over to second or Beatty over to second. There's kind of your groundwork there, and you're still going to need young or more starting pitching here. I don't think Peterson would be included in this deal. But I'd say Santucci could be the other piece as far as a starting pitcher. Again, this is why I think other teams might be able to offer you more, because you still need to hold on to Tong, in my opinion, unless you're getting a proven starter back in the rotation. So now you're at 55. You need around 14 more in value. I think that's where you get into that Boston Barrow, Mauricio type of conversation again. So if you send Mauricio in this deal, then its trade starts to get a little expensive at the MLB level talent going out the door, and you're still not overly close. So that would be kind of how it would have to start, and that's why the trade wouldn't work, in my opinion. Have just been relieved. Let's see here. Upside with Edward Cabrera, don't you think his price gets driven up in terms of return because of the control he has and how the bear market is when it comes to great starting pitching market is? I would agree. Prices should be pretty darn high. Add Corbin Burns. I mean, that'd be one way to offload the salary. That'd be interesting. Negative 93. I mean, I don't think the Mets take this kind of money on. I know he's comfortable with the player because he had him in with the Mets, but we saw how Burns felt about that management team when he was with the Brewers. That's the reason why he requested a trade. That's why things ended in Milwaukee so poorly, is because his relationship with this very front office that is now in charge of the Mets. I'm not sure that would be the right piece. Now, if you're saying Edward Rodriguez going back the other way, I would still say no, but that'd be a little bit less egregious in my opinion. Alright, let's clear this thing out of here. And I want to do a Marte trade that actually could happen besides the Red Sox. I think that one could legitimately happen. I tried doing one with the Rangers. It doesn't fit, even though I think he'd be a great fit in Texas. Who else needs offense? The Pirates really do. They just made the trade for Brendan Lau. This really would be a struggle to fit from a defensive perspective. What do you do with Brendan Lau? Do you put him at DH? You put him over there at third? All kinds of issues kind of pop up if you send him here. But the Pirates, that contract, they could afford it and be able to make a move here. And they have the prospects to do so as well. Hernandez, I think, would probably be the demand. Like Ashcraft would be in the demand. Two really nice starting pitching pieces. And then I'd go down in this range and I'd see if I could squeeze a Mitch Keller out of him as well. Now, it doesn't look like the value is there, but boy, oh boy, this is a starting pitching package. This is a deal I would probably do if I'm the Diamondbacks, and the value isn't quite as high as the other one. I think Hernandez has a sky-high value. Ashcraft I view as a mid-rotation starter. Keller is a mid-rotation starter right now, but he's kind of tapped out at the ceiling. We know what he is. Those other guys can be much more. And for Ketel Marte, a guy who's going to be not exactly at his best when this core that's growing right now with Arizona Diamondbacks reaches their prime, he's going to have to find his way out sooner or later, and he's got 10-5 rights coming soon. That's why they need to move him sooner rather than later. This is a team that we've heard very loosely in connection with Ketel Marte and the Pittsburgh Pirates, but I think they should be a team that's taken a little bit more seriously after they finally got the deal done to bring in Brendan Lau. Now, do you go after another second baseman? That would be part of my hesitation. The cost here on the pitching side, also part of my hesitation. But if you're trying to win, this immediately becomes your best offensive piece in that Pittsburgh Pirates lineup. You got a lineup that now features Brendan Lau, O'Neal Cruz. You just brought in Ryan O'Hearn. You have some nice options there to at least make this offense run a little bit better. Not a bad deal. I'm going to go ahead and validate it and post it. And we'll get another team here. Seth Hernandez and Skeens would be too powerful. No kidding. That's kind of why that would be the demand if I'm the Diamondbacks. I want Seth Hernandez. But he's a little further away because he just got drafted. So that's why he might be slightly more tradable, I would guess, than if he was a little bit more elevated there. Locksmart, Eduardo Rodriguez was a bad contract. Yes, it was. Celebrated at the time for them trying to add starting pitching, but obviously did not go well. Next up is the Los Angeles Dodgers. So what do we have for them in free agency? To me, you could go back to the well, add another reliever, bring back your own guys. Evan Phillips would be a guy to kind of keep an eye on there. I'm going to look at the corner outfield market first and just see if there's a name that kind of catches my eye. I don't think they get Bellinger. I don't think they get Tucker. Marte I already have going off the board. So there's really not anybody in right. Is there a center fielder that makes some sense? Maybe Bader. Lefty. You're not bringing back the Conforto experiment. And Duhar, because of his platoon abilities, I think would be a valuable piece. You're not bringing back Verdugo or Taylor. Can I already have off the board? I'm going to go with some pitching instead. I'm going to say they go out there and look at a Jordan Montgomery type, a Frankie Montas type, and they sign him to a minor league deal with an invite to free agent to spring training. If we're looking major league deal for a free agent here, I think that's when you get into the bullpen. I'm not sure there's too many guys that really upgrade this bullpen as currently constructed, even though they had a hell of a time last year. Kopech, I think, would be still one of the best options there. Kirby Yates had a down year last year. I'll give him Kirby Yates Kobe Yates experience again. And for a lefty out of the bullpen, I'll give him Andrew Chafin, who's had a couple of nice years, but they've gone the high price route for some of these relievers in the past, and it didn't work for them well last year. They already brought their big price in this year for Edwin Diaz, so I'll give them a couple of relievers that they hope to catch fire with this season. Bader, I do agree, Young would be a very good option. Best Dodgers gifts will be trading for Skubal and signing Bo. I mean, they seem to go after all these big ticket items. That's for sure. Dodgers need to bring up prospects and cut down on costs. At some point they will, but at least for right now, I don't think they will. Jay Farrell trading for either Kwan or Duran is the only thing I really see what the Dodgers doing, tapping into their glut of young, promising pitching. Yes, to a certain extent, but I'd like Kwan quite a bit, and that's kind of where I was headed for the trade package. So let's go ahead and do that one. We've got a couple of nice relievers to at least kind of help out in the bullpen. But we're going to take the Dodgers, and we're going to go to the Cleveland Guardians. Well, this is a trade I thought they could have double-dipped with at the deadline, and I think they would have if there hadn't been the off-the-field gambling stuff going on. But Kwan's value currently is at only 25. That's a very manageable number. So you go back to the Dodgers. What's it going to cost out of this Dodgers system? Most of your top prospects you're not going to have to include in this trade. Almost all of them. So I think the first piece that's going to have to be included in this deal, it's tough for me to pass up on a proven outfielder that looks like he's going to be a force offensively, because it's so hard for the Guardians to get offense to work for them. But by the same token, if they don't develop starting pitching, they're nowhere. So this trade would have to include Ferris, in my opinion. Vargas or Lindsey, I'll give him one of the shortstops. And Tunic, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but that'd be another one to keep an eye on. Zazueta would be a third one. If they did include just 3 starters going back the other way, I think that would get you interested. And if you're trying to get them to say yes, I would include the outfield piece as well. So kind of a 4-for-1. You still have tons of prospects there. 2 starters, a bat and Lindsey, and another outfield piece. Rushing over a pitcher. Rushing has way too much value. He's not going in this type of a deal. Cleveland would value catching, I agree, but his value is more than Kwan. I get 4 bites at the apple, which is what the Guardians, Rays, Marlins in years past, A's in years past would like to do. And I think this is what they're doing here in this deal with Kwan. How many of these guys break camp with the Guardians next year? I would say none. I'd say Ferris by the All-Star break anyway would be best case scenario, but I don't think that happens. I think you're probably a year away from any of those names making impact on the Guardians roster, but I think that would be the type of trade that would be a difference-making trade for years down the line. If Lindsey keeps us growing like he has, Christian does, same thing with Jackson, and to me the wild card in that trade would be the outfielder. Not a bad deal. I'm going to do one more small trade here. Actually, no. Let's go ahead and keep it to the 2 and 1. Let's do the next one. The San Francisco Giants. Free agency, they could go pretty much in any number of directions. I'm going to go to the outfield first because I think they could use a nice piece out there. And for me, I'm going to give them Mike Tauchman, a low-cost guy who's going to be a kind of a fourth outfielder for them. Kind of in that Yastrzemski type of a role for me. That they could peddle at the deadline if they needed to. But he's played really, really well. So Tauchman, and then as far as another piece here, I think the Giants have just so much money that they could go in any number of different directions. They could add a third baseman, first baseman. They've been trying to get power in here for a very long time. This could be a team for Okamoto. Could also be a team for Paul Goldschmidt. Luis Arraez would be an interesting fit. Since he's not a big power guy, power doesn't work well in that ballpark anyway. Maybe Luis Arraez could be the guy that they go for. Of course, they still have Eldridge over there at first base, something to kind of consider. And on the starting pitching front, they're still said to be interested in some of the bigger names out there. Are they really going to spend that kind of money? I doubt, but something to consider. I'm going to give Luis Arraez to the Giants. Not that I've heard them fitting there. I just think that first base on a short-term deal until Eldridge is fully established in the majors, I think would be exactly what the doctor ordered, and get somebody on base in front of their power bats that they now have in their lineup. Now, what do you do with Devers, of course? That would be a bit of a question. Is do you put him DH, you put him third, you put him first? How do you utilize that group of players? I think it's more about getting the bat in that lineup more than anything else and just figuring out the rest from there. If they need to play Arraez at second every now and again, so be it. But I think an addition of Luis Arraez would give this team some versatility with options. If players aren't having good seasons, they can sit those guys a little bit more frequently, knowing they have a competent backup in there, or somebody that they know can pull through in those times the other guy wouldn't. So I think that's where we'll go with the Giants. And then on the trade side of things, where could they go? They have a couple of interesting trade pieces, and if they decide to move on from Eldridge, I think they could get a really nice piece back. This is where I go to a team like the Marlins, and I get creative with the trade. I look at Cabrera, and I'm like, hey, Cabrera plus Meyer, would you do that? I think that would be a little bit of a high ask, but that would be the kind of trade I could see them trying to get creative with doing. Or maybe even a Thomas White and a Cabrera. You get your starting pitchers in there. You try to attack free agency to add to your lineup and go forward that way. Be an interesting move. Marlins would be buying high on a first base prospect, which is always a issue because you wonder about the value of a first baseman over the value of a shortstop of similar value. All right, let's see here. Try to catch up on a few more of these comments upside. I'm not sure if this is realistic, but the Dodgers sent Cabrera. They send Hope, Leiter, and Elkins to Miami. Still not too good. Hope is still too much value going back the other way. You hope the Giants signing Mize, the Dodgers will show him he has to deal with just desserts, I suppose. Jay Farrell, I don't think Cabrera would start over anyone already in the Dodgers rotation. Don't need for them. I kind of agree there. They have a rotation of aces. I think the most likely guy would be Noble Mayer. That'd be one. Let's go a different direction, though. If we got Eldridge, that'd be the guy I think they're trying to improve their rotation and their lineup with if they try to do something. Other pieces that they could try to move on from, or at least try to move around a little bit here. Ramos, never seen as a top-end piece, but certainly has shown his value to that organization. Do they try to peddle him while he still has value? Or do they try to cash in on it? To me, Eldridge would be the piece here that I would be looking at, and I'd be trying to make a very nice trade here. And this is where I go to the Boston Red Sox. This is going to be a tough trade to come up with because both guys are similarly valued. Eldridge goes to the Red Sox. You need somebody out there to man that outfield. It's a big outfield, and they got the outfielders to do it. Do you bring in Duran? Do you bring in Rafaela? I would prefer Duran if I was the Giants. I think I would prefer Duran. But if I could get more in return by bringing in Rafaela with his cost certainty, Red Sox get to keep the better outfielder and still improve overall. This helps them out at first base. They have Contreras over there at first now, but if they brought in an Eldridge, I think they'd be just as easily be able to figure out that at position as well. Contreras' value, what is his value currently on this roster? I can't remember what his value after the trade. Negative 6.1. So you send Contreras to the Giants. That still doesn't work. I don't like that. So you need about another 15 value just to kind of with Rafaela. So if you did a Soto, so you get a piece, Rafaela, they get Eldridge to help them out at first base. Now that they've already made for the move for Contreras, would be interesting. Not completely sold either. I think the Giants would do this trade more than the Red Sox would, just because they just made the move for Contreras, but that's about it. What would a package be for the Yanks to get Tatis? It's not going to happen, unfortunately, but the trade package would be massive. You're talking pretty much all of your top-end starting pitching prospects going back the other way. You're probably talking about at least one established Major League starter going the other way as well. And then even then, you still may not be up to snuff with the package. So if you included like a Will Warren, ECR, a LaGrange, I think you'd be in the ballpark, but then you'd still have to add just a little bit more. Merry Christmas to you and your family as well, Breggy. Appreciate you joining us once again. Spencer Jones needs to get traded, but waiting to where? I think he's very likely to start the season with the Yankees organization. If a trade comes up to their liking for a superstar, I think he could be included in that trade, but I don't think they're looking to move him by any means. I think they'd like to see what they have at the big league level before they move on from Spencer Jones. Let's do a different trade here for Eldridge. Where else could he go? A team that's looking for a first base long-term answer. The Rangers kind of fit, but that price is really, really high for him. Offense is needed for the Pirates. That could be a fit, and they have the pitching to kind of go back the other way. This could kind of be a prospect for prospect trade. I could see that. Okay, so if you do Ashcraft, fits in at the middle to back end of the rotation. You trade Barco, a couple of guys that could be in the rotation, and you trade Jones. That gets you plenty of pitching. And now from the Giants side of things, you've already got Eldridge, but who could immediately go in to that Pirates lineup? Let's look at the major side of things. This could be a place for Ramos to go. I think I will do that. Ramos and Eldridge for that package of pitching. Maybe throwing a competitive balance pick to the Giants to round out the value. That's pretty good. Because Eldridge isn't proven by any means. Ramos was never seen as a premium piece, but he's got 4 years of control and isn't going to cost you a whole heck of a lot, even when he does hit arbitration. You get 2 pieces for your lineup on top of the pieces you've already added. That's a pretty decent offer. And for the Giants, you basically solidify all the depth that you lost last year. Honestly, with significantly better depth. And you get a comp pick out of it. Shoot. I'd probably do this one in a heartbeat if I'm the Giants. Do I do this trade if I'm the Pirates, though? I guess it would depend on your opinion of both of those players. For me, I like the Giants into this one a little bit better. Spencer Jones needs to trade. Spencer Jones, good. Trade Dominguez. I would say they need to hold on to both of those guys. I don't think they need to move either one. This is an older team, an expensive team that needs to have some good homegrown talent along the way, and those are two really nice pieces. They don't have to jettison those pieces to acquire the talent they need, so I think they should hold on to them. What is going on with Luis Robert and and the Reds? Is he ever going to get traded? He will be traded at some point this offseason. We've been saying that for the last 2 years, though. I think this is really the year, though. I think this is a team in the White Sox that's just trying to move or turn the page and go with these young kids and see what they got, and not have the distraction about a trade for Luis Robert or have him in the clubhouse. Not saying he's a cancer or anything like that. I'm just saying that the team is ready to move forward rather than just kind of be stuck in the mud with where they've been with that trade saga. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. Got about 25 of you guys with us on Christmas Eve. Hopefully you guys are having some fun with us. Hit that like and subscribe. We're going to continue our live discussion tomorrow, going through the rest of the teams here. Got to get ready for Christmas Eve festivities. Got a few messages already from the folks to get ready. So hopefully you guys are ready for your Christmas Eve with friends and family. Have a good time celebrating. Stay safe out there. If you guys are joining us for the first time, hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. And we'll be live again tomorrow night. Usually, when there's not a holiday, we are live between 9 and 11 is usually when we start our live during the week. And we'll go for about an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes. Just depends on the day. We do try to do a couple of lives later for our international audience and West Coast audience as well. We'll do a couple earlier in the day, around that 9 o'clock hour to kind of reach some of our East Coast viewers as well. But really do appreciate taking the time and joining us this evening. Like I said, if you're new here, turn on your notifications, hit that like, subscribe. Got about 30 of you guys in here right now, so if you guys wouldn't mind, kind of a Christmas present to me. We got 11 people that have liked the video so far. If you guys wouldn't mind hitting that like button as well, it goes a long way to help promote the video. And maybe those who were not able to catch our stream during the working day, maybe when they get home, this can be their Christmas present from us. So hit that like, hit that subscribe, share it with your friends if they're a baseball fan and need something for a gift. Send them some baseball talk in the middle of winter. That'll be fun. All right. Appreciate you guys. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. We'll see you guys again tomorrow, probably around the same time, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you guys for joining us, and stay safe out there. Merry Christmas, everybody.